Good morning, students. Myself, Gagandeep Singh. I'm assistant professor from mechanical department in Chandigarh Polytechnic College. Today, we'll be discuss about grinding machines. Let's start the topic. Different types of grinding machines are designed and used according to work, rough work, precision work, and special purpose work. First of all, rough work grinding machines are of the following types: bench and pedestal grinding, swing frame grinding, and portable and flexible shift grinding. Next is precision grinding. Work grinding machines are the following types: cylindrical grinding and surface grinding, eternal grinder and centerless grinder, and last is tool and cutter grinder. Third is special purpose work grinding machines are of the following types. Number one is roll grinder, then piston grinder and crank grinder, crank pin grinder, cam shaft grinder, thread grinder, gear grinder, and approach grinder, and last is reamer grinder. Uh, let's start with briefly discussion. First of all, bench and pistol grinder. These are the shown in figure, and respectively, they are generally used for snagging and off hand grinding small workpiece and tool in tool room, foundries, and general repair shops. These grinders have horizontal spindle with grinding wheel mounted on both ends. The horizontal spindle fitted with grinding wheels is an extension on both sides of the armature shaft of the electric motor, which runs the spindle. One side grinding wheel is of coarse grain size for rough work, and the other side is the for fine work. The bench grinder is bolted on the bench at convenient height, whereas the radius grinder is mounted on a steel stand of suitable height. Next is swing frame grinder. The swing frame grinder is shown in this figure. It has a 2 or 4 meter long horizontal frame and suspended at the center from the crane or faucet at one the grinder and the frame is swing by the operator about its point of suspension to cover the desired grinding area. The swing frame grinder is used for snagging of large casting and forging with cannot be ground on a bench or pressure grinder. And next is portable and flexible shaft grinder. A portable grinder, the portable grinder as shown in figure resemble with the portable electric drill, both a construction and operation with a different tat, that's the spindle carries the drill chuck in is replaced by a spindle on which mounted is small grinding wheel half covered with the safety guard. The portable grinder are either electrically operated as operated with the compressed in air. The grinder are used in finishing casting, forging, welding joints in structural work to remove burns or sharp edges, preparing surface for welding, removing oxide coating or scales, whereas stock removal in the primary requirement and not the dimensional accuracies. Flexible shaft grinder. The flexible shaft grinder is driven by electric motor. The flexible shaft carries a chuck at its end to receive grinding wheel. The motor is fixed on the stand. Next is a cylindrical grinder or plain cylindrical grinder. A cylindrical grinder or plain cylindrical grinder, it consists of the following principal parts. Now, first is base or bed. It is the main casting, the rest of the floor and support the parts mounted on it. On the top of the base, precision horizontal way are machined for the table to slide on it. The base houses the driving mechanism and the hydraulic drive. It also act as a storage compartment for the cutting fluid. Tables, there are two tables named as lower table and upper table. The lower table slides on the way on the bed and provides transfers of the work past the grinding wheel. It is moved to any for by gear or hydraulic drive within a desired limit. The upper table is provided at its center and it's mounted on the top of the lower table. Three slots are provided on the upper table for squaring the head stroke and tail stroke, which is pointed positioned along the table to suit the length of the work. The upper table has the provision to swivel and clamped in position to have the adjustment for grinding straight or tapered work. Taper can be set up to 10 degree plus or minus. The tapers are grounded for swiveling in the wheel head. Adjustable dogs are provided at the lower table to reverse the upper table and the end of the stroke. Next is headstroke. The headstroke is mounted on the upper table like that. Uh, on its left and having the work drive motor in the head stroke supported the work by the mean of a dead center and drive it by means of a dog. The workpiece can be held on face plates or chuck in a special fixture mounted on the spindle of the headstroke. Next is tail stroke. The tail stroke is mounted on the upper table on its right and in the uh, the right hand and can be adjust the clamped in various positions to accommodate different lengths of workpiece. And next topic is point is a wheel head. The wheel head is mounted on a slide at the top of the rear back side of the base. It carries the grinding wheel mounted on a spindle. The spindle is driven by the belt drive from a spirator electric motor. The wheel head may be moved perpendicularly to the table ways, the hand or power to feed the wheel to the work. Next is working principle of cylindrical grinder. The working principle of cylindrical grinder is shown in figure. The workpiece is held rigidly between centers in chuck or in a suitable holding fixture rotating about its axis and feeding a revolving grinding wheel. Transversing of wheel or work is performed either by hydraulic or mechanical power by or by hand. Feed is given to the work or the wheel. At the end of each transversing movement, the cylindrical grinding operation has four movements. Number one is rotating of workpiece, and next is rotating of grinding wheel, and transversing of workpiece past the grinding wheel. And fourth is a feed of the wheel into the workpiece or the work on the wheel. Next is the three-dimensional view of a surface grinder. In this, the spindle, whether they are horizontal or vertical, it is a precision grinding machines to proceed flat surface on workpiece. It is a more economical and partial method of accurately finished flat surface than filling and scraping. A surface grinder in shown in this figure, it has following major parts. Number one is base and column. It is the main casting of the machine to rest the floor and support other parts over it. The base and a column at back for supporting the wheel hard at the front of on its top its carry table assembly on machined ways in additions to drive mechanism. Next is table. The table is fitted on to the slide on a machined way which moves right or left under the grinding wheel and is called reciprocating table. Next is wheel head. It is mounted on the way of the vertical column which can be raised in lowered with the grinding wheel by rotating a hard hand wheel or to accommodate workpiece of different heights and to set the wheel for depth of cut. Horizontal crosswise movement of the wheel slide with the wheel is obtained either by hand or hydraulic drive. to have cross feed to of the slide wheel with the wheels, and the grinding wheel is rotated at a constant speed with the help of special built-in motor. There are the different types of surface grinders. Number one is horizontal spindle reciprocating table grinder. Next is horizontal spindle rotary table, and vertical spindle reciprocating table. And last is vertical spindle rotary table. Working principle of a horizontal spindle reciprocating table surface grinder. The work principle of horizontal spindle reciprocating table is it is a horizontal spindle of the grinding wheel and carries a straight wheel. Cutting is done on the periphery on the straight wheel in horizontal spindle type grinder. This grinder is mainly used in tool room for uh, grinding flat surfaces. Next is the working principle of horizontal spindle rotary table surface. The in this process, it has a horizontal spindle of grinding wheel and carries a straight wheel. Cutting is done on the periphery of the straight wheel. Usually, a circular shaped magnetic chuck is mounted on a circular table to hold the table, and the workpiece are normally arranged in a circle. The table is made to rotate under a revolving wheel, both rotating in opposite direction. The vertical wheel to the wheel is given by moving the wheel hand along the column. Next is the working principle of vertical spindle reciprocating table surface grinder. In this grinder, it has been a vertical spindle to of grinding wheel and carries a cup type wheel. Cutting is done on the revolving edge of the cup wheel on a spindle. This grinder is also used for grinding flat surfaces. This is the line diagram of working principle of vertical spindle reciprocating table surface grinder. Next is the working principle of a vertical spindle rotary table surface grinder. The working principle of vertical spindle grinder, it has a vertical spindle of the grinding wheel has carries cup type wheel. Vertical feed to wheel is given by moving the wheel head. Workpieces are mounted on the round chuck in the same way in the horizontal spindle type rotary table surface grinder. Next is eternal grinder. The eternal grinder are used for grinding the eternal surface of different types of holes like cylindrical or tapered. The hole is either through or blind. There are grinder are mostly horizontal, but a few with the vertical spindles are also available. Principal type and eternal grinder are follows. Number one is checking eternal grinder, plain eternal grinder, and universal eternal grinder, and planetary and centerless internal grinder. Checking eternal grinder, there are the main parts of this bed or base. It is the main casting of grinder to rest the floor. It supports other parts. It's the top machined way on the which is machined table slides. Next is headstock. The headstock is mounted on the table top of the bed at the left with its spindle axis parallel to the bedway. A separator motor is mounted on run spindle and carries centering chuck screwed on the spindle nose to hold and revolve the work. The headstock can be swell in horizontal plane. Next is table. The table is mounted on the top of the bed and slides on the bedway. On the top of the table is mounted the wheel head and cross slide assembly. During operation, the table reciprocating on the bedways along with the wheel head assembly, which is either power or hand driven. The stroke of the table is set by the adjusting and position of the dogs. Next is wheel head and slide. The cross slide is mounted over the table, and the top on the top of the cross slide wheel head is fixed. The cross slide movement helps the grinding wheel to take a cut into the work. The wheel head carries the wheel spindle with the grinding wheel, which is driven by a motor. The grinding wheel used for eternal grinding have small diameters, and they are run at high number of revolutions. Wheel spindles of various diameter and length are mounted on a wheel head and grinding way, big, small. And the next is plain eternal grinder. A plain eternal grinder, as shown in this figure, carries an individually driven wheel head mounted on cross slide. The work is held in a chuck with is mounted in a fixture attached to the work head spindle to grind tapered holes. The work head can be swell. And next is universal eternal grinder. The universal eternal grinder is shown in this figure. It features and very close to plain eternal grinder. It important feature is that the work head can be swelled with through 90-degree. This grinder is used for grind cylindrical and taper holes, flat surfaces, out cylindrical surfaces, and convex and convey surfaces. Next topic is centerless grinding. The centerless grinder is used to grind small cylindrical parts with holding them between centers instead of being mounted between centers supported by the combination of grinding wheel, a regulating wheel, and a work rest. A simplified diagram of external centerless grinder is the main parts control is shown in this figure. The main parts of grinder is base and grinding wheel head and regulating wheel. In base, it is hollow box like casting, which is rest on the floor supports and all other parts. Grinding wheel head. The grinding wheel head is mounted on the top of the left side of the base and carries grinding wheel on a horizontal spindle run by separator motor. Wheel turning mechanism is also attached to the wheel head. Next is a regulating wheel head. The regulating wheel head is mounted on the top of the base of at the right and side of the machined way to slide towards right or left to adjust size of the work. It carries the regulating wheel, which is smaller in size than the grinding wheel during. Next is the tool and cutter grinder. The tool and cutter grinder is shown this shaper, rectangular, multiple tooth cutter like reamer, milling cutters, drills, taper, and other such types of or tools are used in workshop by using different attachment to the cutters. Grinder is also used to grind light surfaces and cylindrical and eternal grinding to finish items such as a jig, fixture, die, and gauges, etc. And this is the two types: a universal tool and cutter grinder, and single purpose tool grinder. First is universal tool and cutter grinder. The universal tool and cutter grinder are shown in this figure. Is room grinder. It is also shaping, milling cutters by using various. It is also perform eternal gear cutting, cylindrical, and surface grinding. Grinder has following the base of pedal. Okay, thank you very much.